What is up, guys? I'm Joseph. This is JosephsPlace, and I felt like some of you haven't cringed enough recently, so I decided to break my hiatus of video making and upload the first video I've uploaded in 2 months. And this video is going to be a little bit different because I kind of want to just sit down and talk about something. I don't have any gameplay for the background. I just kind of have a topic that I have on my mind that I just kind of want to get my opinions out. And this is more because of what happened with the Dead Man Mode tournament, and I just have some strong opinions about it, and it's kind of bothering me a little bit. Now, I did have a full video recorded about the original situation, but then our Lord and Savior Ash came in and saved the day. However, there are still some things that I'd like to discuss. Now, for those of you who aren't exactly aware of what happened, let me briefly go over it. So the Dead Man Mode tournament was today, as of the time of recording this, and a little bit of drama happened. So during the last hour, during the final fight, there's a lot of chaos going on, and the last person surviving in the PvP area was LOL, and he was declared the winner. However, Woox was the last person to survive due to the fact that he was eating through the fog and through the damage, and he was able to survive past everyone else, so he was the last one to survive. However, he was not named the winner, and the reason that was given for this is because it's a PvP game mode, and he did not participate in PvP. Now, I can understand where they're coming from. I do have a few problems with it, and I do want to give credit to Mod Ash for correcting the situation. However, I do have a little bit of a problem with how Jagex as a whole handles tournaments and why almost all of their tournaments have some sort of drama attributed to it. And I just want to kind of address that just in a little short video here. Hopefully short. I'm known to be long-winded and talk more than people want to listen, so we'll see how that goes. But first off, I want to address the fact that Mod Ash shouldn't have to be the person who corrects these situations. It should be Jagex as a company. Now, if Jagex didn't have Mod Ash in these situations, there would still be an outcry from the community kind of blaming Jagex for what happened. And for this, I mean, a lot of people were on Woox's side originally, saying that he should have won. And granted, Woox does have in a large popularity compared to if someone else, just a random person, did it, there definitely wouldn't be such an outcry. But because it was Woox, his name's big and people care about him. But that being said, I was, and always, like, from the beginning was on Woox's side. I do think he should have won, and this kind of brings me to my first point of why Jagex is poor at running tournaments, is because they never have a rule set established. This situation really could have been avoided if there was just a list of rules of things you could and could not do. Now, from Woox's perspective, and it's seen in some of his tweets, which I'll show on screen, that he was never under the assumption that this was against the rules. He spent his Dead Man Mode tournament time in the seasonal building up for this mechanic. He had a ton of food. To survive that long, he must have had a ton of food. And he had to start stockpiling that pretty early, and he most likely had to fish quite a bit to get that food. And to kind of work the entire seasonal for the specific mechanic, only in the end to have a rash decision made against you, is very demoralizing. And I can see how Woox can be rather upset. I mean, one of his tweets was just basically, I don't understand how I didn't win, and no precedent was set to kind of negate this. And by this I mean, in a previous tournament that You Never Learn won for a fairly similar mechanic. Now, tick eating is not what Woox was doing, but just the idea of not being in PvP and winning the tournament. By You Never Learn winning that tournament, the precedent was set for non-PvP winners, and nothing was really said to address the situation as far as I've seen. And if Jagex had a rule set outlined ahead of time of what is and what is not allowed, that would allow for things like this to never happen. If Jagex had gone out and said non-PvP winners will not be qualified, they will be instantly disqualified from winning, this would never have happened. Woox would understand that what he was doing would be against the rules, and that would never have happened. However, this is not how it happened. There is a very general set of rules, and if you can even call them rules from what I've been able to find, I've looked it up and I've not found any rule set, which I think is a very negative thing, especially in a tournament that the winner gets $10,000. With money on the line, you need to make sure you handle things professionally. Now, with the previous tournament precedent that I mentioned before, You Never Learn, he won by I believe it was tick eating, and just out eating the fog. And he ended up winning. Now, with this tournament, all Woox was doing was just eating. He had a ton of food, and he was using files to unnote things. Now, this kind of is an oversight on Jagex's part. They took out unnoting of things from banks and things like that, but they kept files in the game. Now, it was an oversight on their part, I would say, but you can't disqualify someone for your own oversights. And this really comes back to the professionalism and just the foresight of Jagex and not being able to own up to their mistakes. Now, again, I am very impressed by how Ash handled the situation, and if Jagex comes out and says, you know, there are 2 winners or something like that, I commend them for it. But as of right now, and how it was handled in the first place was very unprofessional. When you have a tournament like that, especially one that's live, you need to make sure you have a rule set established and something set down as a guidelines to make those kind of judgments. It's very obvious that nothing was set, especially in the community's eyes, because most of the community didn't understand what was going on. Even people like Paul, Foe, he didn't know what was going on. He sided with Woox, and someone especially that big in the community and that big in Deadman Mode tournament, you would think he would have an idea. So if people who are very engrossed into the Deadman Mode tournaments and keep up to date with everything and even get fairly far into it and devote a lot of time to it, if they don't know the rules, who does? It's clear that Woox and Foe didn't know the rules, and I'm sure many Reddit users and Twitter users who have been commenting about this also didn't know these rules, that you had to be a part of PvP throughout the entire final hour. Now, this could be easily handled better if Jagex was more professional and had more foresight with what they were doing with the tournament. Now, this is a new area for Jagex, and I can understand that, and I actually am very in favor of these tournaments. I think they're good for the game, they're healthy, they bring not only viewership, but revenue back into the game and interest, but you have to be able to handle it properly and not have these huge outcries. That post about Woox on Reddit, that basically complaining that he didn't win, it was posted right after it was declared he wasn't the winner, and it was quite a while after that Ash kind of remedied the situation, but that'll still hit the front page. As far as I know, it's on r/all. It was at least at number 20 last I heard, and that's going to bring negative views of the game from Reddit, and that's very bad. And if they had proper foresight and they had a proper rule set in the beginning, that would have all been remedied, and you wouldn't have these sort of outbursts and just overreactions from the community. And I think that's something Jagex really needs to kind of keep in mind. A lot of their updates and a lot of things are tied so closely with the community, you can't just ignore the community like they have been doing, in terms of not outright ignoring them, but just having the lack of foreknowledge and just not planning ahead really is just a detriment to the community in general, because things like this happen. Now, this is a very prime example, and even in previous Deadman Mode tournaments, they aren't proactive enough to handle these situations properly. They need to be able to foresee problems happening and fix those. I'm sure in the span of the next week or so, they'll come out with more exact rules of what you can and cannot do addressing the situation. But we should not have gone 3 seasons without something like this being addressed. And I think it's a very negative view of Jagex, and I think it's something that from here on out, especially with new content coming out, they need to be aware. They can't just keep pumping out this content because it's doing well, because it's getting viewership, especially in a live event. It was at TwitchCon. It was on the spot, and they didn't have a proper way of handling a situation like this. If you look at League of Legends, another very popular esport, even as far as I know, CSGO have very structured esports. With CSGO, there's even different leagues that aren't similar to League in the terms of Riot handles the LCS, the League of Legends tournament. There are other companies and organizations that handle CSGO tournaments, but they all have a very similar rule set, and while some things may vary, they're very structured, and they're very organized, and the ones that aren't go under. I know there's a few CSGO, there's been drama, there's always drama in CSGO community, but it's based on the community's viewpoint of things, and with Jagex trying to handle this tournament on their own, and if things like this keep happening, I mean, just look at CSGO as an example. The community, the backlash from the community can be huge and can kind of bring down things that, even though they look like they're going good, the turn of a hat, if this wasn't handled by Mod Ash personally, by him personally paying Woox $10,000 within an hour and a half of it happening, it that it could have huge negative impacts to the game. So it's just something that Jagex needs to handle and take care of better. It's just their foresight, their foreknowledge, their planning. I know they have a Q&A team, QA team, not a Q&A. They have a QA team, but they're not using that QA team for other things outside of game mechanics. They'll test game mechanics, but they're not really the extra part of it, such as just out eating the fog. That was never planned for, because they thought, oh, we'll just take denoting out of banks and then we're done. Forget it. No one's ever going to out eat the fog. It's going to be almost impossible. And someone did, and Woox did, and he planned his Dead Man Mode tournament, his stats, his progression based on that. And just something like this should never have happened. And that's kind of just what I want to get throughout this video, is just we need better planning if we're going to handle live events like this, especially at something like TwitchCon. I understand you want this to be PvP based, and I understand the original decision of disqualifying Woox, but when you have, especially someone as popular as that, using a mechanic, and then you immediately tell him he's disqualified without any rules and even a precedent that goes against what you said, it just has a very negative view from people on the outside. And people in the community too. And that's just something I wanted to kind of get off my chest and talk about. I did make a video, I guess a little harsher towards Jagex on the situation because Woox wasn't the winner. But since Mod Ash did remedy the situation, I'm backing off a little bit, but still, this wasn't handled officially by Jagex. It was handled by Mod Ash as damage control. And damage control is always worse than handling the situation before it happens. If they handle the situation, there'd be no need for damage control. Everyone would be happy, we'd be fine. But the fact that they have to go back and control, or they need to have a damage control whatever, like this whole situation that's happening, the fact that this is happening is just not a great thing. And the fact that this has happened before, and this whole negative viewpoint of Dead Man Mode and the winners, when you have money on the line, the fact that they're still not handling this properly is not a great thing. And I would really like to see this being handled from here on out in future Dead Man Mode tournaments. And that's really all I gotta say about it. I hope you guys enjoyed my little rant here. If you guys want to see more videos like this, I'd love to start making them. A little less of a podcast and more just of a rant kind of style video. I'd love to make them. They're fairly easy for me to make, especially since I don't have any background content to really show on the screen. But if it's not something you want to see, that's fine. Most people don't want to see stuff on my channel anyway. So, but I hope you guys did enjoy the video. Again, I am Joseph. This is Joseph's Place, and I'll see you next time.